In October of 2023, Dr. Thomas Horn, our former founder and CEO of Skywatch Television and Defender Publishing, went to be with the Lord. Since then, it has been the number one question our ministry has received. How are we doing? And how are the ministries doing? What are we doing going forward? How is everything surviving? Are we surviving? What's the new plan? Are we going in a different direction? Are we keeping everything the same? We've had these kinds of questions more often than any other question in the history of our ministry. And I want to take a moment in this busy world where everyone is rushing to and fro, having all kinds of deep theological conversations about aliens and Nephilim and what's going on at the Vatican and transhumanistic sciences and all these different things that we talk about. I want to take a moment and stop and remember the platform that Tom began and take a moment to sit with his wife, my mother, and the matriarch of this family and of this ministry to talk about this and just to remember and to answer some of the questions you have about direction. So welcome once again to the Donna Howell set.
Thank you, Donna. It's good to be here.
So this is Mom. This is actually Mom to me. And it's funny because, this is a funny little ha-ha memory, but in the very beginning of Tom putting us out there, he said, now listen, if you kids go out there and you go out there as Tom's kid, you will always be remembered as Tom's kid. You're going to brand yourself from day one as Tom's kid. And I really want you guys, you've been called into your own ministry. And if you're going to do something in ministry, I want it to stand on its own merit for what God has called you to do, not because you're related to anybody else or because you know somebody. And so for the longest time in the very early years, we were instructed very strictly, I am Tom. I don't care what you call me. And when, Christmas time comes around and I walk in the room, you can call me Dad, whatever. But I'm Tom on the set. And so we got so used to that. And then a few years ago, that all shifted. And he's like, you've branded yourself. People know who you are for your own merit. Everything that you do is resting on your own name, so it doesn't matter anymore. And people can now know that we're related. And so it was this weird time where we were so used to calling him Tom. And then we would get on like the Skywatch set or over at Jim Baker's or something, and I would be sitting there and, well, as Tom says, it felt really weird, and I never knew, do I call him Dad? That finally just dropped. And we finally were starting to move into this new, era where it was just me and Dad or me and Mom or whatever. But I'm actually glad that was dropped when it was, and that we're moving into a new era where people can just know. We do stand on our own merits, but we are related. This is really Mom. Joe Horn, the main anchor host of Skywatch Television, is legitimately my biological brother. Same parents. Allie Anderson, who has been on a lot of our programming in the past, who's got a lot to say in the world of psychology. She is legitimately biologically my sister. This is really how this family works. And we are every bit as close as we appear to be. That's another question that we get a lot, especially in person. Like if we go to do a conference or something, they'll say, well, I love your family. I love how close you guys look on the outside. Is that real or is it a facade? Are you at home bickering or, Never, not ever. We really legitimately did. And the family construct, which is something that Brittany and I here and there, when Brittany and I have had a chance on the Donna Howell Show, we've talked about the family construct or lack of the family construct that is kind of permeating our society now, where a lot of families are just not really that close. And when they are, it's almost like everything in the world comes against them. Society tells you can't be that close, because if you are, it's weird for this reason over here or that reason over there, or it's just everything. Everybody is under attack. The family is under attack. And so I'm very fortunate. And I'm fortunate to be in a position. It's unfortunate in that I don't want to think about and remember my father in past tense. And that is very difficult. I might even lose it. So I'm just warning y'all, I might lose my cool. Remembering him in past tense is very difficult. But I would not trade my life, my position, being your daughter, being his daughter, being Joe's sister, Allie's sister. I would not trade that for the world, and our family really is everything that we look like we are from the outside. As Disney-esque as that might appear to be to some people who might think that we're putting up a show, that's really who we are. Now, I want to shift gears and let you explain to the audience there's something that you have said over and over again for the past year. And you've said there's no bad days, there's necessary days. And you have discovered in your own walk, in your own conversations with some of these people since the unfortunate events of last October, that that's really helped a lot of people. So please start with that. What do you mean when you say that? And how can that be applied?
You know, when you lose a loved one, and there's different loved ones. There are people out there right now that they've lost their children, be it whatever age, still your child, spouses. And I was weeping one day after my husband passed, and someone later says, "So how are you doing?" And it's like, "Well, I had a really bad day today." And then I thought for a minute, no, it's not a bad day. Why was it a bad day? I was remembering somebody that I love so much, and he was not there. Why is that bad? Why do we think of that as being a bad thing? It wasn't a bad thing at all. It was necessary. So I said to myself, you got to rephrase that. It's not a bad day. It's a necessary day. And ever since I've done that, I realized that those are moments that I need to be alone, unless those around me, they're going to hear me cry, and that's not fun for them. So I know that everybody that's out there, they have those days, and then they have necessary days. And I was sharing that with different individuals as I've learned that within myself. I've shared that, and it seems to have helped a lot of people. And I just wanted to share that concept today with anybody that's listening, and maybe it will help you too if you're listening or watching. Because when someone that you love and you've shared 48 years with, or 12, or 5, or 1, or maybe you're not even married yet, who knows? It hurts when you lose that person. And when you grieve that person, it is necessary for you to do that. It would be worse to bottle it up, and it would be worse to hide it. It's best for you just to say, yep, I had a day today. I had a necessary day today. Yeah, I bawled my head off. It bothers me when I think that my grieving affects my children. So I'm not the first phone call out the door. Well, I cried today, kids. I keep that kind of to myself, but I know they know I grieve, and we've shared those things. But one thing I don't want to do is just call them up, bawling my head off. I keep those moments private. But to do that is very, very okay to do, and I think it's healthy. If you feel a moment that you need to grieve, you should just do it and be content in the fact that it's okay to do that. And that's helped me a lot.
One of the things that I noticed naturally, it's not like I did a bunch of research or, theological digging on this or whatever. It just kind of happened, was during that 10-day period that he was in the hospital. It never even occurred to me that this was above and beyond my typical walk with God type practice. But I fell into reliance on God in a way I never had before.
Right.
And honestly, I don't mean to suggest my life has been perfect and I'm just spoiled. I've experienced pain. We've had, outside of our immediate family, we have had different people we've interacted with in different ministries before. Long stories that are not even worth telling, and they're irrelevant right now, about maybe different hurt that has been caused. And I'm just very lucky that it was never my own parents or immediate siblings. When Dad was the one that I was suddenly praying for, it was no longer this practiced, okay, I'm doing my Christian duty, I'm praying for this person. There was nothing about it that was rote. I can't even explain it, except it felt a little bit like if I thought I knew the Lord before, now I rely on the Lord. I had to give it to him. I had to give it. There was no choice that I had. I didn't know how to process the hugeness of this situation. And I think a lot of people that have written in and asked questions about how things are going since Dad passed away, my own loss is so great. They've said over email, people we didn't even know. We've never met these people. It feels like the loss is personal. Yes. He was my hero, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, trust me, I know. Because he really was my hero too.
Me too.
And not that me and Mike Heiser were ever like BFF close or anything, but I had not even completely gotten over losing Mike Heiser when things with Dad went the way they did. And I just remember that there was this moment. First of all, it actually started while he was still in the hospital. You might remember this moment. And it's tough to talk about, so I apologize in advance if this is disturbing. But I was in the hallway, and the code started blaring. The code for
His room.
the defibrillator thing. And I don't know how to put this other than to say I just went full scale, nearly Pentecostal in there. In the middle of the hallway. I wasn't in his room. I wasn't in the waiting room. I was in the hallway where all of these people are running and I just fell to my knees on the floor and started scream praying. Not in tongues. Now that I've said the word Pentecostal, there might be people that were thinking that, but that's not what I meant. I just mean it was loud and it was desperate. And I was screaming Jesus to the top of my lungs, and my arms were outstretched towards his room. I've never in my life had a demonstration of my own personal walk with God in that way. But at home, it was like that. And there were moments where my husband and I drew closer because of it. And it was just all of the horror that was happening, the lack of belief, the crazy hard. It was so huge and hard that was going on. I remember the one thing that came out of that was me going, wow, I've never trusted God like that. I've never depended on God like that. I've never in my life been in a position where, to that extent and with that kind of abandon, just throw myself on the floor and just face on the floor, screaming, praying. And that, it was hard, but also it kind of revealed to me some things about where God is in the picture. When everything is rosy and loss never happens in that season. That season is a season where, sure, you can follow God by faith. You can do all the right things. You can talk to him daily. You can be in his word. Those are necessary seasons. You need to be in your word and speaking with the Lord, even when everything in your life is going rosy. You do. You do need that. But when something just stinks and there's no escape from the pain, suddenly you and God get pretty close. I have to struggle to find a bright side. But I think that's the bright side. I think that, during those seasons where everything is so hard and so painful, that is the moment you need him the most. And that is the moment that you are the most grateful that the relationship you do have with him has been paved to the point that it is. Because reliance is necessary. And you can trust him in a different way than if it's your first time. And by the way, that's not any judgment for people that they didn't really think about God much or whatever, and then they face a tragedy, and then now they suddenly come to the throne of God. There's nothing wrong with that. I know that is the testimony for a lot of people. But for those of you out there who are listening, who are sitting there going, I've always had a relationship with God. I noticed that for me, it was hard to find. And in my finite flesh, I would say impossible to find on certain days. But there was a bright side that in the worst moments that he could be counted on, and I trusted that he could be counted on, and I grew closer to the Lord through this loss. To answer the growing question about the direction of the ministry, that a lot of people have asked, are you still going to carry the torch that he originally lit? Are you changing the format of Skywatch and all these different things? For the most part, with the exception of a few tiny tinkery background noise type things, no, we're not really changing anything. We're carrying everything that he wanted us to carry forward, and we're just doing it the same way we've always done it. For the most part, the things he dreamed are the things we're carrying forward in the exact same way that he dreamed them.
I would like to interject there. You made me remember something that happened during that last few days as well. There came a time when he was unable to speak and he was kind of incoherent when they intubated him. But prior to that, when he was still alert to the amount that he could be, because he was also really tired, and there was one moment where he was talking about moving forward. And I want to make a really, really important difference here, because it has really helped me in where I'm at right now. The important part about the difference in moving on and moving forward is that moving forward, you've always got all of that visionary, and Tom is with us, and God is with us. moving on suggests that you're leaving that vision and all of that memory behind. Now, for some people, that may be okay, but for me, I am moving forward because those were the instructions I was given. And that has been what has brought me a great comfort, knowing that I still am moving in that general direction. And He is with me and not behind me. It's really, really given me a lot of strength. And that is that, I've heard people say, move on.
Mm-hmm.
But he used the term moving forward because I don't know if he felt his time was near. I don't know what was going on in his mind. But I find it very, very comforting to know that if he did, some of his last words was to his family in projecting strength and vision even in his last words. Because he kept telling us, moving forward, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to plan this? And what are we going to do? Tell me more about Defender. Tell me more about, Skywatch. What are we doing now? And you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. He never stopped talking about the future and challenging us to move forward. Mm-hmm. And I love that. And the reason that I love that is because when he said moving forward, that's exactly what I'm doing. It's exactly what we are doing. We are moving forward. We have not lost any of that vision that was there when he was breathing and was with us. He only breathed that into us by using those words, moving forward, we're going to do this. Mm-hmm. And he would say, if I come home, this is what we're going to do. If I don't, I'm going to be with the Lord. But what are you going to do to be moving forward? You know what I mean? This is a man that he does. I don't know. Maybe God had spoke to him and said, you're coming home. I don't know. All I know is that on my side, I just didn't expect him to pass away. I'm like, no, he's coming home. I'm not leaving without him. But he kept projecting that moving forward on his last few breaths. And so after the fact...
And not to interrupt, but I've got to interject this. In the same time that you're talking about, his kids are coming in all hours of the day.
We never left.
Well, yes, we never left the hospital, but when I say we were coming in, I mean to his room, because lots of times we were asked to leave because they needed to do different things.
Right.
So we were in the waiting room a lot. We each got a moment, and it's so funny that how that happened. For me, I'll speak for me, and then if you want to share about other times, you can, but there was a running joke in our family that Dad was trying to retire.
Yeah.
It was a running joke because he had retired 25 times in the last 10 years. He kept retiring, remember? And then we would take over and he'd come swooping back in. Okay, here's what we're going to do next. You're like,
he just
Dad,
would not
go
stop.
get in an RV with Mom. Go look at a big ball of yarn or something. And he just wouldn't stop.
No.
And so more or less because it was a joke, he got to talking about how in one of these moments I came in and I was standing there. It was first thing in the morning and he was just waking up and coming off of his meds, and he started talking again about how he's going to retire and he's going to go look at giant balls of yarn with my mom and an RV and all these different things that they were joking about. The retirement joke and the ball of yarn. It's a family joke. Literally the largest ball of yarn in the world is like
it's like 2 or 3 hours
miles from here. So, something. That became like...
It was a running joke.
You guys probably never would have actually gone to do the ball of yarn thing, but it became the joke that we kept talking about. Like, one of these days you're going to go look at your ball of yarn. Well, anyway, he started that up again. And he was talking about how he's going to take you and throw you in an RV and go look at a ball of yarn. And I pulled out my phone because I thought... At the time you started to say it, I thought, okay, I've got to get him on record. So then in a couple of weeks from now, when he comes back and he says, okay, here's what we're going to do now with the ministry, I can pull my phone out and say, I caught you.
You got to stick to it this time. Yeah.
But the second I hit record, something shifted in what he was saying and he stopped talking about the ball of yarn. And here's the funny thing. His eyes were closed. He was not in a position where he could open his eyes yet at this point. And so he didn't switch what he was talking about because he saw my phone pointed at him.
Right.
He didn't even know my phone was out.
Right.
And he just shifted and started talking about me and my ministry and who I've become and what it's been like to be my father who's watched me grow and all these things. And that, honest to God, there's probably coming a day where I will share what he said. And it's not because it's a secret. It's because I will become a puddly ball of goo if I try. To hold myself together, I will just say that he gave me what I did not know at the time was the last thing I would ever hear him say about who he thought I was and what it was like for him to see me grow up. And it was the goodbye that I did not know was a goodbye.
Right.
And that was a moment that, had it not been the fact that I pulled out my phone and hit record, I probably would have doubted later some of the things he said, some of the ways that he built me up in his final statement to me, some of the things that he brought up that I didn't even know he still remembered anymore. And he was very clear of mind, but he couldn't open his eyes, and his speech was very strained, but he was making it very clear. I mean, the things that he was saying, there was no doubt that that was a thing that was supposed to happen for me to carry on.
Yes.
And I got my moment. And I know I was not there for the moment that he had with Allie and Joe, because I had to step out constantly for some other dumb thing that was happening at the time. So I missed a couple of those moments toward the end. But I know, didn't he effectively get his moment with all of us?
He had a moment with Joe that was exactly the same, where it was just very definitive, very much about how proud he was. I will let them speak their own, because it'll be more meaningful for them to get to share that. That was their moment with their dad, and I'll let them share that.
Yeah.
At the time, like you said, we did not know that it was his goodbye.
Well,
But
I brought it up because you were sitting here a minute ago saying that I don't know if maybe the Lord told him, hey, you're coming home soon or what. And I'm sitting here going, that really could be, even if it was subconscious.
No, this is my thoughts now. At the time it was happening, it was like, what a wonderful thing. He's telling these kids such wonderful things. You know, I'm so happy that he's telling the wonderful things.
Right.
But then later, I mean, as I've had this whole almost 1 year now to think through and remember, and I've often wondered if maybe he had, I just don't want to say it, but maybe he knew. And it was his way of preparing us. But still, you've got this man. If he did know his last words and his last breath, he's going to encourage and challenge and support the family and give them fatherly advice and growth, that all in one moment that's going to last a lifetime. What a man. What a wonderful man.
Yeah.
What a legacy of a human.
I have really fond memories
Such a sweetheart.
of working with him as an adult. Because I have great memories as a kid, too. In fact, right after his memorial service, I remember we did a follow-up Skywatch episode. And they had asked me, I don't know if this made it into the main episode or maybe this was like some little web exclusive something, but they had me share one of my favorite memories, and it was the firework.
Oh, yeah.
There was a very funny, weird little firework. In Oregon, none of the fireworks are allowed to go off the ground. They're just fountains
Right.
because of the tree density. Dad had bought this. It was weird. I don't even know what this firework even was, but it was like after it's done spinning or on the shooting the sparks or whatever, this straw blows up a little red balloon ball thing.
Right.
And you're supposed to be able to pluck it off the firework and use it as a bouncy ball. It's
Right.
really
It was a gimmick.
just a gimmick and
It
a
was horrible.
cheap piece of garbage. Anyway, Dad didn't think about the fact that because it had just finished stopped sparking, it was going to be hot. So I'll never forget it. When Dad walked over and he picked it up, look, Donna Lee, a happy little burning ball. That's my favorite childhood,
Oh,
one of
my
my favorite
gosh.
childhood memories.
I
But there's so
remember that.
many.
Oh my gosh, we laughed about that. We still laugh about it, actually. Never
The
stopped
day of
laughing.
the happy little burning ball. But anyway, there were moments like that from my childhood, but then also just moments of working with them as an adult that was an incredible privilege.
Yeah.
And what's funny is it actually started a lot earlier than most people would ever know, when I was, trying my hand at creative writing and stuff like that I had to do for school or whatever. And he had asked me a couple of different times, hey, can you write? I need, like 2 or 3 pages on this thing. I just can't write it. And I don't know. And he would ask me to write something for him. And I would, write it and turn it in. I'm like 12.
Right.
And people have no idea that little sections of my writing here and there from my entire life has ended up in his books here or there. And then finally, I want to say approximately 2013, he started bringing me in to write full scale, like a whole chapter at a time or a whole book at a time. I
Right.
remember Redeemed Unredeemable
Yes.
was originally not supposed to have my name or my face on it. It was 100% going to be the next Tom Horn book. But what happened was after our initial meeting about what he wanted that book to be like, and he was saying it's really, and he wasn't trying to steal from me at all. He was like, do you want to help me write this?
Right.
I never thought I was going to have anything to do with it. And then at the very end, after I had turned in the last page, this is before the conclusion was written, because the conclusion is, hey, my name is Donna Howell. I haven't yet spoken on this issue, but here's my opinion. But before that was written, and I had sent everything else in, and he's like, okay, come out to lunch with me and your mom. So we went out for lunch or whatever. And he's like, I know you hate it. I know you want to be anonymous. This goes back to my testimony again. I've got to tell my testimony soon about me wanting to be the appendix and this whole 9 yards about how I wanted privacy and I wanted to work in a back room. Never ever put my face on anything. Are you kidding me? No, are you kidding me? No media, no book. I want my face on nothing. I want my name on nothing. I just want to be in a back room professionally. Yeah, that never happened. But it was because of these moments. And he said, you've written this entire book. I can't put my name on this and feel good about it. You've got to come and help me talk about these on the programs and do some of this media with me and all this stuff. So after probably 6 or 7 finagling sessions later, I finally agreed, okay, go ahead and put my name and my face on this book, and it'll be the one project we do together.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have not stopped. No. We didn't stop working together from that moment forward. So there is a side of the loss that's probably the only way I can say it right now and still hold myself together is to say that, it was more than just father, although father, in the case of Tom Horn, father is big by itself. It was also business partner, co-author, mentor,
agent,
everything.
Because he was always wanting you guys, again, as you've put it, to put yourself out there. And so some of these projects that he gave you guys were opportunities for you to put yourself out there. Mm-hmm. And it was successful. But he had other motives than just getting another book out. He was that way. Yeah. Bless his heart. He's so sweet.
Sneaky. It worked every time.
Yeah, because you can't say no to him. No, because he had this way of looking at you with that cute little smile and go, really?
Yep.
Yeah, he had a way. He was very, very persuasive. One thing that I would like to just kind of pull from my memory is his generosity in general. Just in public and in private, he's always doing cutesy, very, very generous little things for people that just would flabbergast them. And they would come and ask him, why did you do this? And he would smile and say, well, just felt like I should. And I'm not going to go into detail because it would steal away from his thunder, but he was very generous from everybody that served his table when we would go to a restaurant to just everybody around. That should have been his name is Tom Generous Horn because he's very sweet, very giving, very, very, and very forgiving and loving. He also... guy. People looking from the outside in would see the way that he interacted with a lot of very famous scholars. Mm-hmm. And they might, I'm not saying that they have, but they might get the impression that he is a professional hobnobber that bumps elbows with the big studs in the Bible scholar world. But the truth of the matter is, on a very private note, there were the scholars like Mike Heiser who were legitimate, what they claimed to be, and they were 100% BFFs with Tom, but there were moments. Yeah. See, it's that old habit. I still call him Tom sometimes because he made me do it for so long. But there were a lot of times where knowing him, knowing Dad in the background, and he would meet these people who were kind of big man on campus types with their britches were pretty big. We'll put it that way. I'm a big deal on TV or whatever. And they came in, thought they knew all the answers. And they acted as if the other staff that wasn't Tom and Joe, were like their underlings or something. You know what I mean? Right. The type where they swoop in, they come in from out of town, they start barking orders, acting like they know the place or whatever. He was always very cordial, but when they were gone, he always had a very balanced way of letting us know, don't be like that. Don't you see what he just did? Yeah. The way he made that little old woman feel like she was nothing in that moment, don't you ever do that. Right. Don't ever be like that. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, the people that he was closest to were the people who were legitimately like the true Christian people. It wasn't even that they were big, famous, big deals. So you're saying he's generous, but I know
I watched him for an entire lifetime be the guy who was very real, very real. And he would befriend the one in the room that nobody else would befriend.
Yep.
And he would lift up the lowest among. It was very reflective of the words of Christ, where the first will be last, the last will be first. The guy on the top's going to be the guy on the bottom in the the post-life totem pole, and the meek will inherit the earth, and all these things that we hear it, and it's almost Christianese. It's gotten, circulated and looped in the church so much. We've heard so many sermons about it that we tend to not see the power in those words. Yeah. But Jesus himself, absolutely, are you kidding me? God in the flesh could have walked right into that New Testament Jerusalem area and started snapping his fingers and calling shots and being friends with the big dogs. And he could have just treated every little disciple like they were underlings. He's just a fisherman. Oh, and that guy over there, he's a tax collector. This woman over here, she's bleeding. Dude, that's a ceremonial unclean thing, not me. I'm the Son of God. He could have done that. But he was absolutely the opposite of that. And when I think about like who my dad was in real life,
right,
it was so much like that. He was the guy. It was almost like he had a radar. The one in the room that was hurting and that did not have a friend in the world was the one that he would kind of vacuum toward. Yeah. How can I help this person? How can I be there for that person? And he really was that guy. Yeah. And so people from the outside, they see him in all these video clips and everything like that, shaking hands with people from the Discovery Channel and the History Channel and all these big name scholars. And he did care about these people a lot, and he was friends with them. But he wasn't the hobnob guy. Yeah. He wasn't just this big, better than you scholar guy. He really was legitimately a friend to the friendless.
Yes. His favorite thing to do was drive the tractor for the little kids, take them down to the fishing hole. Got a picture of him with his thumbs up on the tractor. It's my favorite picture right now. Somebody was gracious enough to put that on a pillow and send it to me. And it's on my bed, and I have it there. But that was a very comforting thought. He used to go to the post office barefoot. We've always laughed about that. Because
that's right here in town.
Could be dead of winter, but he'll just hop in the car and go down and check the mail. He's barefoot.
Yeah, the Tom Horn of Skywatch TV is barefoot walking in to grab his mail.
That's because he grew up barefoot on the desert, so he just never liked wearing shoes. But the little picture that I just referred to about him on the tractor, not having him here has been really, really hard. And I'm not going to go into a bunch of details right now because then I will lose it. But let me just put it this way. It has been the most life-shaking thing ever happened to me. Above anything that I've ever gone through, it's been the hardest thing to deal with. And there's been some days where, selfishly, you want him back. But I will tell you, he's not in any pain. And that's another thing people don't know about Tom.
That's right.
Is he lived in pain daily, lots of pain. That was one of the reasons why we didn't know it was his heart, because he had so much pain in here, because he's had several heart checks over the years and passed them. I want you to know that I know where he is. There's not a doubt in my mind where he's at. I know where my husband is at right now. In fact, really cutesy, because, they talk about the husband being the covering over the home. And so I would go to my husband and I would talk with him, and we would decide what God wanted for our life, right? Because God talks to the husband, and you know how that goes. So I've always thought, Tom and I would talk, and then it's between him and God, right? Well, now that Tom is not there, I had to go directly to God by myself. It's like God is now my covering. That's who I go to now. I mean, I've always prayed and I've always gone to God, but it's like you said, man, it gets real.
Yeah.
And it got real fast. So I've learned that my covering now is God himself. So the cutesy part of that is because I said, God, will you please give my husband a hug for me? Maybe skag his noggin, slap him on the back, And then it was really funny because I thought, I used to do that. It's reversed now. Now it's between me and God to talk to Tom. It used to be that me and Tom, and then Tom would talk to God, right? No, me and God now discuss Tom. And I was like, I'm just saying, I somehow know that God is talking to Tom. I can't know why I know that, but I just do. So there's comfort in that.
I have, in a similar vein, taken comfort
in knowing that he's no longer in pain, because like you said, you couldn't tell. He never talked about it on television
No.
or any of that
Never
stuff.
complained.
But he did have a degenerative bone disease.
Yes, he did.
That caused a tremendous amount of pain and misgrowth,
Yeah.
misformation
Yeah.
in certain aspects of the bone.
Which affects the nerves.
I would say probably, although it's not even close to the same physiological condition as Trevor's, I think when I've heard about people who suffer with Trevor's disease, that some of that is a little bit similar. And he went through a lot. He had moments where the bone disease.
And he had this injury from when he lost his fingers, is what some of that was all about.
So
nerve damage.
And then in addition to the degenerative bone disease, he had rheumatoid arthritis. Right. And from the cookie factory that took those fingers,
right.
Lots of people have noticed that right. 2 of his fingers were missing. Right. It was his index and middle fingers that were missing on a lot of the programming that he did. That actually happened because his hand got caught in a giant Hobart mixer. Well, so when people think Hobart mixer, they think it's something that's this big.
Right.
But this was at a cookie factory where the Hobart mixer is the size of a room.
It was like 1,500 pounds just for the dough.
Well, it grabbed him and it jerked him up and it whipped him around the room because it's a mixer. Yeah. It whipped him around the room. He got caught in it. Somebody that was a coworker of his managed to flip the switch right in time. I won't tell you what would have happened if they wouldn't have caught it in time, but it did save his life. But that jerked him by the arm and whipped him around the room, and he had all kinds of deep tissue injury from everything from muscle to bone to joint to the whole thing that was all up the arm and near the shoulders, which is, again, when you get near the heart area, it's partly why, he had so much pain in that area that when it was heart pain, he didn't know
the difference.
Right. Yeah. Me nerding out the way that I do, a number of years ago, I took a class and it talks about the corporeal body of 1 Corinthians 15 and how, when you get on the other side, it's still a physical body. You still walk around and you still have arms and legs, and you don't just become this glowing spirit thing. Right. You still have a corporeal body. Right. It's no longer limited to our understanding of our current laws of physics. So, for instance, Jesus, who was in that state when he started to appear to the many in the days following his resurrection, he could walk through walls. He was operating outside of our physics, and he was, there was no pain. And we know that he still bore the scar of the way his life came to an end. It's cute to me to think that Dad is in a place where he's no longer hurting at all. All of that pain is completely gone, but he's still corporeal and he's perfect in his understanding right now of theology. He doesn't have to sit around and wonder which one of his theologian buddies got it right. He knows. Yeah. And he's got the rest of eternity to figure that out. But I'm sitting there going, does he look like this? I don't know. It's so fun for me to imagine like when we finally reunite, and I'm not in a hurry. I am in a hurry, but I'm not in a hurry. Right. I know that I've got things I'm supposed to do while I'm here and my kids need me.
Exactly.
But I love to think that there was this little thing he used to do. Okay, so the average person who has all 10 fingers, there's this thing, and I can't do it, but a lot of old elderly gentlemen in church used to do it, where they do a lost my finger trick.
They take their thumb or they do this, and then they wrap it like that, and that looks like you pull your finger.
It looks like they pull their finger off. Okay, well, that was the shtick when I was growing up. Everybody in church thought, I'm going to get this kid. See this kid? They just came off the street. I'm going to throw them a wild one. And they would pretend to lose their finger. And, okay, we've seen that 500 times. My dad would walk in the room and go, what do you think of this? Huh? And they really did.
Because he would wiggle them.
Because on both sides, they weren't curled under. Like, he legitimately removed his fingers and out the kids. Their eyes were, what? How did you do that? And so I'm sitting there the other day and just cracking myself up thinking, I wonder if Dad's up there. Look at this. Just showing the saints his trick. Which I realize, heaven is probably nothing to do with our current concepts of social interactions and that sort of thing. Right. But we're limited to our understanding in this plane. And I enjoy thinking about those things. Yeah. So, and I'm glad he's not in pain anymore. And I'm very, very grateful that the next time I do see him, it's going to be under unfathomably joyous circumstances, forever, eternal circumstances. and never being separated again.
Love
I look
that.
forward to that. And I feel my heart breaks for people who don't have a faith in anything after this.
Yeah.
My heart breaks for them. I am not saying that in the way that some Christians would, where now they're going to turn this into an altar call moment and guilt trip everybody into
Right.
saying the sinner's prayer. I mean, I legitimately, my heart is broken
Right.
for people that think this is it. This is the end. It's like,
Yeah.
wow. But I'm very grateful, and I look forward to it, seeing him again, sharing all of the other side things.
I would just like to take a minute to say thank you to all of the people who do support Skywatch and the ranch, and who do know our family and have sent cards and have sent thoughts and have
Right.
sent prayers, and those that still pray for us, because we still get notices from people that they're praying for us, and that is so meaningful.
Yeah.
So meaningful. You know, I have received a couple of letters just to me, and they seem to come dispatched from heaven at the moment that I need them. And so just want to say, if you're one of those people out there that have written letters of encouragement, please don't underestimate how powerful and encouraging that is. Those are moments that are inspired. So if you have other people write things and send them in a physical, that's very important. It's very meaningful. But I'm very thankful to all of the people out there who have held us up in prayer during these times. It's still really fresh,
It is.
and it's easy for us to sit here at the moment and talk and have fun, but then there are those necessary moments that no one knows about, too. So those are the moments I know people are praying, and I just want to say thank you for that, to
Yeah.
the people out there.
Thank you for sure. Thank you for your prayers. Before we go, one of the recent books that we published was by Lynette Hill called Overcoming Cancer. And there were a few areas in this book where she and I collaborated together to figure out how to take this elusive thought that's really hard to put into words and how to put it into words.
Right.
And one of the areas that I kind of helped walk her through was this area where she's dealing with how do you balance the way the Bible talks about death. I mean, even Paul said, to die is the better thing. And you're like, what? It's so backwards. It's so completely different from what we think.
Oh,
To die is gain? Really? But when you have the heavenly perspective and you can really think about that and apply it to your own personal, your father, your family, and imagine it that way, it really is not just comforting in our temporal plane. It's the truth. It's the literal eternal truth. And so she was dealing with certain questions about the afterlife and different things like that because of her cancer journey. And so I collaborated with her and helped her put this one section into words. I'd like to read this very short excerpt. This is from chapter 10, also called Heavenly Perspective. The Bible has several verses that initially come across bizarre and hard to comprehend in today's modern world. For the early Christians, that heavenly perspective was closer to home. Dying and going to heaven was, for them, a graduation of sorts from the worry and anxiety of this flawed human condition into the bliss and perfection and divine love for all eternity on the other side. Somehow we, as a modern society, have lost that understanding along the way, and the heavily sought-after perspective of the apostles and biblical saints regarding the tragedy of death is so much harder to grasp now. We say words out of habit or obligation, like acknowledging that someone has gone to a better place. But when it comes to genuinely applying that in the face of death, we are so far removed from how the ancients felt about these concepts that heavenly perspective is traded for an earthly one, where we beg God for more time here and then blame him if we don't get it. Translation: we beg God for more time in this inferior, temporary, fleeting life of hardship and pain, and blame him for being unfair if he instead chooses to graduate his child to paradise before the rest of us are ready. It's like a young girl crying in despair when she has been told by her mother to come inside and stop playing in the mud. It's her favorite recreational activity, so she is distraught and disappointed by her playtime being cut short. But she has no idea that she's been called in to clean up and pack for a trip to Disney World, the better place. She agonizes for a moment, and her friends from next door also cry at her disappearance, believing the mother to be unfair. But when they're all enlightened enough to fully comprehend the whole story, when she returns from her vacation later on, they will all rejoice that she was whisked away from the mud pit and into the magic kingdom. They will want to know all about the sights and sounds of her trip, listening enviously to what the young girl was experiencing in a child's paradise, while the rest of them had only mud to play with. The mother, on the other hand, knew, through her unique parental perspective, that once all the children had a complete understanding, they would no longer mourn over the day the mud play ended before they were ready. How often we cry over the loss of this transitory place so filled with pain, failing to completely and maturely comprehend that those who have accepted Christ as their Savior will be taken to a place of ceaseless eternal joy and glory. All the while, God knows through his unique omniscient perspective that once all his children have complete understanding, we will no longer mourn over the day a loved one left the mud pit of this life and playtime before we were ready. Until then, the loss of life is seen as tragic, an earthly perspective. It talks about, some of those hard verses.
Yeah.
Like to die is gain and so on. But I shared that because the illustration of the little girl in the mud pit, we get it in our minds that this, even the best life here, Mom, mine, yours, the best life here, we got to keep it. We've got to survive. We can't go nowhere. We've got to stay here. And if anything disrupts the expectation that tomorrow all my friends and family are going to be here, here's the sinful fallen nature, the human part of us says, God, I wasn't ready. And how come but once you flip the script and you look at what the Bible is actually saying, we graduate to the better place. I'm happy for Dad. He's not in pain anymore. No. Everything that he set up here is being carried. There was no unfinished business. There was no, oh snap, Dad's gone. What do we do in this area? Yeah. I mean, of course there was the ripples of loss. Right. And you're sitting there going, what would Dad say? What would Dad say about these things or whatever? But he was so meticulous in setting everything up. Right. And knowing how to make something that continues on. He's graduated. He's got his stole. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, he's literally just like the angels, the choir, the never-ending ceaseless worship. And once believers understand what heaven actually is being described as, it is not this never-ending worship service in the clouds, a song service that just goes on for eternity while the lucky ones get a cloud to sit on and a harp to plunk. This is going to be a glorious, eternal place. It's nothing like what they depict in movies, cartoons, television. Heaven, as it's described, wow. It is complicated and beautiful and eternal. And Dad's there. So now I just got to catch up with him, but I'm not in a hurry because I do understand that there's things that need to be done here. But he's no longer in the mud pit. He's graduated. He's to the better place. So once we shift our perspective from the earthly to the heavenly and see heaven and death the way that the apostles did, it becomes a very ironic, good news update that this person is no longer trapped by this. So me and my theology mind, I always go to what's behind the English translation. Yeah. And I love it because once you study heaven, it's like it's so much bigger than people realize. So grand.
The thing that comes to mind as you're describing all of that, and it may seem a little cliche, but really, again, when you go through these kinds of things, you really get a better perspective of what real is. And I can just see him reuniting with his mom and his dad and all of the saints that we've known over the years, some in which he has held the ceremony and burying, you know what I mean, as a pastor. He's reuniting with all of those people that have preceded him. And so, you forget about those little things until you realize, hey, you know what? He's not alone. Not only is he with his Lord and Savior and his Creator, he is with his brothers and sisters in Christ who have preceded him. And talk about a celebration, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm not in a hurry, but I do look forward to getting to see where him and Mike are at right now, Mike Heiser. Because Dad and Mike, here's the funny thing is that on TV they look like, scholars in arms. But behind the scenes, I mean, throw a dart at any biblical topic. Any chart on the wall with biblical topics, you could throw a dart. Tom,
Right.
Mike, 1, 2, 3, go. And they would just, well, according to this scripture and da-da-da-da, isn't it going to be fascinating, Tom? And
yeah.
yes, Mike. And it was so cute to just see him just
Yeah.
boom, boom, boom. So up there, now with their perfect understanding,
Right.
they're probably giggling. Karl Barth, one of the most grand church fathers in our church history, one of the greatest theologians who, by the way, almost every Christian book you pick up today, almost every one of them has in some way been influenced by this man's theology. So he's a big deal. And he wrote, and this is not an exact quote because it's Old English because he wrote it hundreds of years ago, but his thing was, he said, when I get to heaven, the angels are going to have a good laugh, looking at me standing there, pushing up my little rolly cart of all the dogmas I've written, and the angels are going to laugh. Well, the guy had a sense of humor because he gets it. Here he is, one of the greatest Christian theological minds in history. And he's going to have a good laugh at his own little dogmas. It's just funny.
Right.
But he gets it. He
Right.
gets it. That you can think you know more than Mike Heiser. You know, you can think you are more anointed than Billy Graham, whatever. Then you're going to get up there and go,
Yeah.
what did I know? But
Right.
now I know.
Right.
And Dad gets to be
Right.
in the now I know
Right.
part of his journey.
Right.
That seems like a really natural place to put a pin in things. And just once again, to say thank you to all of the supporters out there. Listen, when you support us financially, it means a tremendous amount. But when you take your mouth and give words to the Father in heaven on our behalf,
Right.
that moves mountains.
Yes.
So thank you for all of the different kinds of support that you've given us, but mostly thank you for your prayers because the family has needed them and we've
Yes.
felt them.
Those prayers have carried us.
Yeah.
They have carried us and comforted us.
And I hope that this episode has given you a more intimate look
Yeah.
at who we are, that you can walk away from this episode knowing something fun about Tom that you didn't know before. We hope to keep things just as personal and just as fun.
Moving forward.
Moving forward,
Forward.
as Dad would say. Yep. Moving forward. So keep watching the Donna Howell Show, and thanks for tuning in.